Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hi, it's me, Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T, the owner of this radio station. I invite everyone to listen, no matter if you're young, old, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, heck, I even want real estate agents listening to my station. Yes, even Rick and Tracy. You're all welcome. Now, it's back to my Goodwill ambassadors, Brad and John.
Boy, every time he says that, it's to the point it puts a heavy burden on us to do a good job because we got to be the Goodwill ambassadors, right, John?
You know, the dude that pushed that big old rock up the hill, that dude said, hey, I don't want a lighter load. I want stronger shoulders. That's what we have, Brad, strong shoulders. We don't ask for a lighter load. We look at our deltoids, medial, anterior, posterior, maybe our rhomboids, and we say, I can handle it.
So in other words, you're saying no pain, no gain.
Yeah. That would be a state school colloquialism for it, sure.
A state school.
Let me put my nose in the air, Brad.
As opposed to a Washington University school.
Yes, I don't think at Brookings Hall, I don't think we heard the no pain, no gain, Brad. And I don't know what accent this is. It surely isn't representative of the students who are getting full rides there now, no.
Do you think that we've already seen the fact that Fontbonne College is shutting down, Webster University has some issues, all the colleges complaining there's less students, and I guess part of the problem is, there's a theory in marketing that you push the price of your product or service to what they call point of resistance, and then when people go, oh, we're not buying that anymore, it's too expensive. But somehow the colleges and the universities haven't gotten that clue. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, who subsidizes them?
Well, yeah, once again, it's the federal government. It's the state government, that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, what are we talking about today, John? I mean, we need to get into the top three right away.
We got so much stuff. Today was one of those days where it was hard to narrow down the top three, Brad.
John, every single day, puts together his list of all the important stuff going on around the state, puts it on his website, johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. The first thing we do every morning of the show is we ask him to tell us, out of the dozens of things that are on every single day, what he believes are the top three. We have a special guy. What's your name again?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he comes in, and what do you do?
Now on with the countdown. In third place,
Brad, I want to quote one of the most reputable groups in American history, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Brad, a completely nonpartisan and non-ideological group. You're familiar with Southern Poverty Law Center, right, Brad?
Yeah, they're like in the same category as the ACLU, aren't they?
Oh yeah. But I think they're even bigger lovers of freedom, Brad. Now they have designated a group called Patriot Front as a white nationalist hate group. Those kind of groups that say that, I don't know, immigration is rampant because in general we want to replace old white men with something else. Well, anyway, Southern Poverty Law Center has designated Patriot Front as a hate group. Now, you say, John, what does this have to do with Missouri? Well, Brad, the Springfield News Leader, breathlessly today, top story, lead story in their online newsletter, white nationalist stickers celebrating the Patriot Front have been spotted in Springfield, Brad. They are on light posts. They are on utility poles. They're wherever you look, Brad. Somebody's putting up white nationalist stickers, and the Springfield News Leader is on it. Now, Brad, this story pairs nicely with an interview that Austin Peterson, who hosts the Wake Up America show, Austin hosted a conventional radio show for many years in Jefferson City, and now he hosts the Wake Up America show. In July, Austin had a guy named Gavin McInnes on, which many of our listeners are familiar with. He was founder of Vice, and then he also was a co-founder of the Proud Boys. Gavin McInnes last July on Austin's show laid out exactly how him and his friends, literally unmasked members of the Patriot Front and identified them as federal informants. They're Fed boys, Brad. So I would suggest people go to my website today, take a look at the Springfield News Leader story, the breathless coverage from the news leader, and then take a look, just skim through Austin's interview, and Gavin McInnes talks a little bit about literally unmasking the Fed boys and recognizing the guys who were federal informants.
Well, interesting you should bring this one up because last week, wasn't it? Last week, I don't know if you're familiar with this, where a lot of the transcripts and some of the audio actually came out of the situation up in Michigan with the group of guys who supposedly were going to try to kidnap the governor.
Yeah. And we're laughing at him. It was Whitmer, right? Wasn't it Whitmer?
Governor Whitmer. Or we call her Gretchen Wilson, but that's a whole nother story. So,
yeah, that's right. I have called her that.
Right. She's the ex-country star who's now the governor of Michigan. And the same thing on there, into the point where I heard an interview where it was the actual recording where the FBI guy was dealing with the informant, and they were in a quandary as to what to do because apparently the other guys in the group found out that he was an informant, and they were trying to figure out, well, what do we do? Do we arrest him? Do we make him disappear? And I'm going like, okay, here we go again. It's like, isn't this entrapment when they do this kind of stuff?
Yeah, of course it is. And if folks are looking for a laugh, and if you've never seen some of these memes, they are fantastic. If you look up Fed Boys, and boy is spelled B-O-I in this, like, in the meme world. So it's F-E-D-B-O-I. And look at some of the Fed Boy memes. And when you look at some of the federal informants who are seeking, and now let's be honest, anybody that's read through, Martin Luther King transcripts or counterculture transcripts from the 60s, the federal government has a long history of putting informants into groups to gain information, to disrupt, things like that. But some of the Fed Boy pictures, with the joy, Brad, of social media, you can take a picture of a bunch of Fed boys hanging out that are pretending to be, Christian nationalists or whatever, and they got their pants on that are freshly pressed that they all just bought en masse from Target, or some other supplier. It's ridiculous.
So you're saying that they're easy to spot? Is that what you're saying?
They are absolutely easy to spot. Now, I think they've gotten a little bit better at it since I think the incident that's most frequently cited in the Fed Boy memes, I think, was around 2019. And a bunch of guys that look like they're straight out of, Quantico are standing around and pretending to be ruffians. Anyway, I would suggest people just glance at the News Leader story. And by the way, Brad, this is not one of the top 10, but the Springfield News Leader, speaking of important journalism, they have a story flagging the fact that it is 1 month, Brad, only 1 month until it's 420, man. And there's a whole lot of pothead stuff going around in Springfield. You want to celebrate recreational marijuana? There's a whole lot of stuff to do.
John, once again, I don't get it. I'm eternally a square dude. That's all there is to it. Okay, moving right along.
Up a notch to number 2.
House Budget Chairman Cody Smith has detailed some plans in his budget, Brad. Budget stuff is going to be the hottest thing when legislators come back from spring break. If you're not aware, Brad, they're on spring break this week. Everybody needs a week off. Kids get a week off. Legislators get a week off.
We never got a week off, but did you get a week off? Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
No, absolutely not.
I didn't either.
Well, but Brad, remember, we have strong deltoids. We're pushing that rock up the hill. Right. So Cody Smith came out, talked a little bit yesterday about what's in his budget plan. And the main takeaway from this is that there's a significant amount of funding for improvements to I-44. And especially if anybody's been down around the Joplin area, some of the interchanges down there, it'll actually be widened. I-44 under Smith's funding proposal would be widened to 6 lanes in some areas. Now, MoDOT already has an I-44 plan. If you go to the Joplin Globe story, which I have up today, they have a link to MoDOT's current I-44 plan that details in the St. Louis area what some of the improvements are. Now, Brad, this is the Cody Smith story is the important part. It's the serious legislative angle. Cody Smith, by the way, is running for state treasurer. And now my favorite piece of I-44 legislation is this, and we haven't talked about this on the show, Brad. You know how legislators sometimes propose symbolic bills, like just to rename stuff or name stuff? Some of those silly bills, Brad?
Yeah, and they have the acronyms they put on them.
Yeah, there's always an acronym, something catchy. Or if you're like or it's gimmick legislation. Like if you're some big schlub and you're like, we're going to make the sprinkly donut the official donut of Missouri. Everybody look at me. Aren't I funny? Vote for me. But in this case, there was a renaming bill that I thought was really clever. A guy named Don Mayhew at the beginning of the session had a renaming bill. And Brad, it had to do with highway names. You know what the clever part was?
What's that?
He had a very simple bill. I think it was one line. He wanted to switch the names of I-44 and I-70. No fuss, right? Because part of his district has I-44 in it, around the Rolla area. And he's like, it is wildly ridiculous that I-70 is getting all this attention and all this money and all this love. So let's just flip-flop the names. We just switch the signs out, and we'll rename I-44 I-70. Now, disappointingly for the state representative, the bill has not gained any traction. But he did make a point, Brad.
So he wants to essentially, in other words, I-70 in St. Charles County would become I-44?
Yeah, we would just switch the names of I-70 and I-44. What's the big deal, Brad?
And I-44 in southwest St. Louis County or in southwest St. Louis City and Franklin County and points beyond would become I-70?
Yeah. But see, the important thing is then all the money would go to the road formerly known as I-44.
Oh, man.
See, they would get all that I-70 cash, Brad. You see what I'm saying?
Who is this guy?
His name's Don Mayhew, and he's from a city called Crocker, which I think Crocker's in Phelps County. Anyway, he's got I-44 runs through his district. He has an expansive district. Now, Brad, clearly he was not expecting his colleagues to support this bill, but it was a symbolic gesture because everybody's going to look at it and say, okay, let's talk to Don about what's going on. And it gave him the opportunity to talk about, hey, why is I-44 not getting enough attention?
I think we need to rename Don Mayhew.
What do you think we should call him?
I don't know. Let's give him a different name.
I bet you could come up with something.
Or how about Lawmaker McLawmaker or something like that? Or
yeah, something generic like that. Now, Brad, when legislators get back, this was almost the number. I'll tell you what was almost the number 3 story was the education bill that passed the Senate. Has something in there about your favorite topic, Brad, 4-day school weeks. But I think we'll talk about that when the legislature gets back.
Here we go. Okay. And last but not least,
the
numero uno.
Josh Hawley was in Jefferson City yesterday to officially file for re-election. Now, most folks came to the Capitol on the day that filing opened. Everybody likes to stand in line and do their photo ops and take their selfies and such and make their statements. As an aside, I kind of like the idea of a guy like Hawley filing later than usual, like filing at his own pace. I think it subcommunicates without being blatant. I think it subcommunicates, hey, I've been in D.C. fighting Joe Biden. I've been making noise about big tech and illegals and all this other stuff. I'm going to come to Jeff City on my own timetable and file in plenty of time and do it on my timetable. I like that idea, actually. But Hawley filed yesterday. He had brief remarks for assembled media. And one of the interesting things to come out of it is that, according to reporting from the Kansas City Star, Hawley says that he would not support Trump giving a blanket pardon to everybody who has been convicted of January 6th crimes. So in other words, Hawley said, look, I don't care who you are. There should not be a separate standard for BLM protesters from normal citizens, from January 6th, traipsing around the Capitol attendees. And Hawley said, look, if you assault a law enforcement officer and you're convicted of it, you deserve whatever punishment you get. So I thought that was interesting. Well, and I think a lot of Missourians, even folks who aren't crazy about Hawley, would look at that and at least say on the rhetoric side, it's a pretty sensible position to take.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there were people who were out for no good on January 6th, and there were people who were just like strolling through. I mean, there's video of guys going into some of the doors, and the police are escorting them in.
Of course they're. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened, Brad. And there's my favorite videos are the ones where these violent rioters stay within the velvet ropes. That's my favorite part. Well, these guys are so wild and crazy that they follow the established path that you're supposed to take in the Capitol.
over the weekend, there's a guy by name of 97.1 by name of Ryan Wiggins. I don't know if you know who he is or not.
No,
and
I don't.
He does a show on the weekends on 97.1. It's called Wiggins America, and he has some interesting interviews. He interviewed a guy who was celebrating, I don't know if celebrating would be the proper word, his 1,000th day in jail in Washington, D.C. He was one of the Jan 6 guys, okay? 1,000 days, he's not had a trial. Now, once again, isn't there something in our Constitution that
in
says
the Constitution,
that you're supposed to have
trial.
a speedy trial? Now, and once again, he talked about how a lot of the time, he was in solitary confinement. Now, let me tell you, there are people that you and I are rubbing shoulders with on a daily basis just by sheer chance who have been arrested for rape, armed robbery, burglary, car theft, maybe even murder. There are people out on the streets right at this very minute who had perpetrated much more heinous crimes than this dude did. And once again, I'm not necessarily saying that what he did was right, because he admitted he took a swing at a cop on January 6th, or maybe more than one. Okay, once again, you do the crime, you do the time, but once again, the situation is you don't stick somebody in jail for 1,000 days without giving a trial. And I just don't understand the whole the thing that gets me about it is that the Democrats have just taken this and turned it into, well, look at Donald Trump. He brought those people to D.C. He told them to break into the Capitol. He told them to do this. And this thing that's come out over the past couple of days, you and I talked about it. I think we talked about it both yesterday and Monday. The deal with the bond for Trump.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is just out of control. I mean, the whole thing is, and maybe we'll talk about that later this morning, but the crazy thing about this is he lost the trial. He, according to Letitia James, the AG of New York State, he owes, $440 million, let's just call it $500 million. And he's trying to get a bond because the way the court system works is you can't appeal the case until you post a bond that would be that essentially would satisfy the judgment on the case, which for him is like $500 million. The story yesterday is pretty interesting. Mark Cuban, who is no fan of Donald Trump, came to his defense because this one. Do you know this story too?
No, I don't. I didn't hear that Cuban said this. No.
Okay, there is a rep saying, what's his name? He's like, I think he might be from Hawaii. His name is, let me see if I can find it here real quick. I thought I took a note of this, but maybe I didn't.
Mikey Mahalo.
No, his name is Lou. Here it is, right. Here's the story. Representative Lou, Lieu, I guess it's Lou or Lee, accuses Trump.
He's related to Lucy.
Okay, no, he's not. Accuses Trump of lying about not being able to pay $464 million judgment. Mark Cuban says he's wrong. And Cuban, he's from a Democrat from California, Ted Lieu, Lieu. Trump, or Cuban essentially said, and it's interesting because Cuban comes out and says he's he's no fan of Donald Trump, but he says that Representative Lieu has no idea what he's talking about because of the fact that Donald Trump does not keep liquid assets. His net worth is tied up in real estate, which makes it, by the nature of real estate, is not liquid. You can't just, you can't just turn it into cash in a day. And essentially, he's saying that what Lou doesn't understand, he doesn't have that kind of cash, and the bonding companies want double. They want $1 billion. The bonding companies want $1 billion liquid, and it's still going to cost, even if the thing's overturned and Trump, the case gets reversed, it's still going to cost Trump $30 million for the bond fee. And I'm going like, this is just out of control. And the crazy thing about it is, if you heard about this in another country, if you heard that like the president of Samoa, that's bad. That's bad.
They are Samoas are delicious cookies, though.
Girl Scout cookies. If the president of Nicaragua, let's take that, was having his, and he's coming up for re-election, and the guy who's running against him, he was having him tried in court for something that's trumped up. You go, oh, that's like some third world country, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a banana republic.
Right.
Yeah, and not the delightful yuppie store, but a real banana republic.
remember from I always thought it was cool that Union Station. Remember old Union Station?
I do remember when it was safe to go there. Yeah. Yeah, the fudgery. Was there a Banana Republic there too?
Yeah, but that was the one that had the Jeep that was crashed through the front window. Did you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?